Abby was rescued, Inkpaduta kind of disappeared into the frontier, at least for a while. However, the U.S. government was not going to let him go unpunished. They wanted Inkpaduta dead. So on July 2, 1857, only 32 days after Abby was rescued and just a few days before she reunited with her sister Eliza, there was some excitement here at the Upper Sioux Agency. Word had reached Major Flandreau, the Indian agent at the Upper Sioux Agency, that some of Inkpaduta's band was at the agency, apparently making an attempt to obtain some annuities that were set to be issued. Major Flandreau immediately requested military support from Fort Ridgely. 15 soldiers and 12 mounted volunteers marched overnight to reach the Upper Sioux Agency by daylight. They were led by Lieutenant Murray and Major Flandreau and this guy, John Otherday, you met in the last chapter. The soldiers were nervous and asked John Otherday how they would know the difference between Inkpaduta's men and the other Dakota Sioux there. Otherday calmly told them that if they either run or fight, shoot them. They would be Inkpaduta's men. If they sat quietly and watched, they were not members of Inkpaduta's band. Don't shoot them. The Army found Inkpaduta's band, consisting of about 3 to 6 teepees, camped 5 miles above the Upper Sioux Agency on the plains just above the river. The Army attacked. A man burst out of one of the teepees with a shotgun. There was a gun battle. The man was wounded, in fact, riddled with bullets, but still alive when one of the soldiers drove his bayonet through the man's chest, killing him. The soldiers must have been disappointed. The man was not Inkpaduta. Inkpaduta was still out in the Dakotas with the Yankton. It was his son, Roaring Cloud. You know this guy? The guy that Abby heard beat poor Lydia Noble to death outside the teepee. There is something about the death of Roaring Cloud that says something about Inkpaduta. The whites had characterized him as a renegade, disliked by everyone, including the Sioux and the Dakota Sioux in particular. That does not appear to be the case. The Dakota Sioux on the reservation that morning would have known that the soldiers just killed Inkpaduta's son. They would also have known that they took into custody his wife and his child. And doing all of that, stirred up a hornet's nest. Dakota women howled. Warriors tore off their clothes and painted themselves for war, armed for the fight. They swarmed around in anger, and all of that forced the soldiers to release Roaring Cloud's wife and his child, and provide 2 cows as compensation. The soldiers had to take refuge in a log cabin. A call for help was sent out to Fort Ridgely, and another 60 soldiers arrived in 24 hours. In the meantime, the reservation Dakota Sioux brought Roaring Cloud's body up to the camp, and there was a long council over it. Lots of speeches, lots of reverence, lots of respect for Inkpaduta's son. It appears that the Dakota and the Sioux in general viewed Inkpaduta as a hero, somebody with the courage to do those things that maybe they wish they had done. You know that old saying, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist? I think that explains, in part anyway, why the Dakota Sioux were so angry when on July 19, 1857, about 4.5 months after Abby's rescue, the government informed the Dakota Sioux on the reservation that they were going to withhold the annuities until the Dakota Sioux either arrested or killed Inkpaduta. The dispute became so heated that eventually the government threatened to go to war against the Dakota. Finally, having no real choice, the Mindawakatan chief, Little Crow, who you've met before, reluctantly agreed to lead an expedition against Inkpaduta. 3 days later, Little Crow left the Upper Sioux Agency with 100 men, mostly Sissetons and Wahpetons. He also had John Otherday with him, one of the 3 Christian Indians who saved Abby, and also, if you haven't figured it out by now, the guy you want with you if there might be a fight. I don't expect that Little Crow's group had their heart in this mission, but they traveled 95 miles from the Upper Sioux Agency to Skunk Lake by present-day Madison. Skunk Lake is the place where the 2 Christian Dakota purchased and saved Margaret Marble some time back. Inkpaduta was nowhere to be found, but they did find and kill 3 other men, wounded another, and captured 2 women and a child. One of the men, Firecloud, was killed by John Otherday. He was Inkpaduta's son. And the other men who were killed, they were also involved in the Spirit Lake Massacre. 14 days after they first left, Little Crow and his men returned, and this time refused to go out again after Inkpaduta. In the years to come, Inkpaduta was involved in a number of battles against the whites, starting with the Dakota War of 1862, which was about 5 years after the Spirit Lake Massacre. The Dakota Sioux War of 1862 used to be called the Great Sioux Uprising, because in essence that's what it was. The Dakota Sioux on that small reservation in Minnesota rose up and attacked the whites. It was a bitter, horrible war full of atrocities. It lasted for about 5 to 6 weeks. During that time, Fort Ridgely was attacked twice, first by 400 Dakota and a second time by 800 Dakota. The town of New Ulm, with 900 residents, was attacked twice, first by 100 Dakota and then second by a larger force. It ended with over 500 settlers killed and the largest mass execution in American history, with 38 Dakota Sioux hung in Mankato on December 26, 1862. It does appear that Inkpaduta fought in this war, although it's likely that his fighting was limited to the western part of the state of Minnesota near South Dakota. We know that he was involved in the Battle of Abercrombie. The fort shown here, located on the Red River on the boundary between Minnesota and the Dakota Territories. Even though Inkpaduta had limited involvement in the War of 1862, it was generally thought by the whites that he instigated the war. He was responsible for the war. He truly was the villain of the frontier at that time. For those who are interested in knowing what happened to Inkpaduta after the Spirit Lake Massacre, this is probably a good time to stop and summarize without getting too far into depth. After the Dakota War of 1862, many of the Dakota Sioux involved in that war fled to the Dakota Territory. The government wanted to punish them, so the government sent a couple of armies into the Dakota Territory after them, thousands of soldiers. And there were a series of battles in the Dakota Territory as the government was attempting to push the Dakota Sioux, and all Sioux for that matter, across the Missouri River. In 1863 and 1864, there was the Battle of Whitestone Hill, the Battle of Big Mound, the Battle of Stony Lake, and Kildare Mountain Battle, all involving thousands of troops and hundreds of Sioux. There's no clear record on this, but in my opinion, it's likely that Inkpaduta was probably involved in all or most of these battles, and he survived. During the winter of 1867-68, Inkpaduta joined Sitting Bull on the Missouri River. He assimilated into Sitting Bull's Hunkpapa band of Lakota, who highly respected Inkpaduta. In the late 1860s and 1870s, Inkpaduta continued to raid with the Lakota. On June 25, 1876, Inkpaduta was at the Battle of Little Bighorn. His role was probably very limited. He was 61 years old at that time and nearly blind. It is likely that he did not join in the fighting, but stayed back in the camp to try to protect the women and the children. Inkpaduta's twin sons, Sounds the Ground as He Walks, and Tracking White Earth, both fought in the battle. Sound the Ground as He Walks reportedly killed Custer. That's been a matter of dispute for quite some time. Tracking White Earth was wounded in the battle and later died in Canada. It's interesting to think that since the Battle of Little Bighorn occurred 19 years after the Spirit Lake Massacre, both of the twin boys who were in the Battle of the Little Bighorn were probably at Abby Gardner's cabin on that morning of the massacre when Inkpaduta brought his entire family to the cabin. In the summer of 1877, Inkpaduta crossed over into Canada, where he rejoined Sitting Bull and settled near Brandon, Manitoba. Local Sissetons wanted nothing to do with him. They thought he would bring trouble. He lived in isolation, and this is interesting, because he feared that many Dakota still blamed him for the deaths of their loved ones in the Dakota War. He became a farmer, started a garden, and later moved on to a new reserve at Turtle Mountain for Wapakooties, where he felt safer. He grew old surrounded by his children and died in 1881. He was out hunting, caught pneumonia, and passed away at the age of 66. I wonder whether or not Inkpaduta, at the time of his death, had any thoughts about Spirit Lake, Abby Gardner, and her family. Just a thought.